So what were you saying?
Oh, between the break, I was watching on the news, and I'm sure everybody's heard about the Warren Jeffs. They're that crazy polygamous cult. But I noticed in the news though, national news, that compound that they had. Well, the government took it, and I noticed that it's coming up for auction. They have it scheduled for one of these tax sale auctions coming up here pretty soon. There's actually a lot of property with that sale. But they have the entire compound there. It's like 6 acres. And
Is this a compound in Texas or the one in Utah?
This is the one in Utah that
Okay.
that is scheduled for the auction.
Wow. Wow, amazing. So tax liens affect everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, and definitely. It makes sense in that situation, where you've got a lot of those delinquent taxes, but somebody is going to end up picking up that property for probably a fraction of what it's worth.
That's in some ways that's sad. In some ways that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys are right in the thick of it. You guys are both in Utah. Do you live in Salt Lake personally, or do you live in outside?
I guess we're about 30 miles south of Salt Lake.
Okay, so down
here
in
Utah County. Utah County.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The Warren Jeffs group, they're down at the very bottom of the state, almost.
Yeah.
Really, actually, they're right there on the border. So,
Yep. Yep.
but
yep.
there's a sale. Looks like they've got the actual story is kind of funny because it has the story about about the compound, and then it's got a direct link to the county website where they've got the tax sale list up.
Wow. Amazing. So the actual news story has a link to the county.
Yeah.
That's wild. Hey, everybody, and I know that you guys have been listening to us talk a little bit. Shade and Skylar and I are just, we were on the call earlier today, and we're just kind of kibitzing this afternoon, seeing what kind of stuff there is about tax liens in the news. I wanted to say, first of all, hi to everybody, and thanks for being on time tonight. It's really interesting. Our daytime workshops, more people come early for whatever reason. And so at the top of the hour, we've got a lot more people. Evenings, they come on 5, 10, 15 minutes late. I understand evenings are crazy, so thanks for making it. I've been not out of pocket, but I've been out of touch just for a little bit. I've been in the process of moving a lot of my operation from Texas to California, and I've also been doing a lot of stuff up in Indianapolis where I do a lot of investing. So I've been kind of all over the country, and it's nice to kind of settle back down again and start doing these every week. And this is really fun for me because I've never been a big, huge fan of tax liens, and you're going to hear one of these guys talk today about how tax liens are the best things in sliced bread, and the safest investment and the highest yielding, and there was a time when I would have said BS, notes are. And the reality is that, guys, you got to hear this, and you got to see it, because there are some really safe returns that you can get with tax liens that I was unaware of the actual safety. I mean, I was aware of the process, and I actually sold a property, which I put on an email today, and I'll tell you a little bit later in the presentation about how I bought a property in Texas at a tax deed sale for the school district. But they've been around. I just didn't realize how lucrative they were. And a couple of my students earlier today on the call were talking about how absolutely incredibly and lucrative tax lien investing has been for them. So keep that in mind. We got two experts on the call with us tonight. I will introduce Skylar and Shade more, what's the word I want to use with you guys? More professionally? You can introduce yourselves. Wow, I'm not quite sure we want to go there. So anyway, but you know what? Let's do me a favor. Hey, it's been a long day for all of us. I got that. You got that. For those people on the East Coast, it's 8 o'clock at night. I got that too. So let's do this, okay? In that dashboard on the right-hand side, I want you to type in, "Hi, Bob," and then tell me where you're from. And if you've been on a lot of these calls, then you're going to say, "Hi, Bob from..." Hi, Bob from Chicago, hi, Bob from wherever. But go ahead and do that now so that I can see you guys are actually paying attention. And, wow, don't all do this at once now. Come on, help me out here. There we go. Now we're starting to get started, and we'll see what happened here. And I'm going to bring this up on my screen. So, wow, cool. We've got Charleston, South Carolina, and Roberta says hi in Twin Lakes, Wisconsin, and Piatt, Pennsylvania, Brownsburg, Indiana, South Carolina, outside Detroit. I'm not quite sure where you mean by outside Detroit. PA, Florida, Maryland, Colorado, Fort Lauderdale, San Antonio, Colorado Springs, Chicago, Santa Rosa, Florida, Maryland. Come on, now we're getting someplace. Brisbane, Australia. Yes, Rod, you win for coming to be the farthest away, I think. Let's see. Florence, Kentucky. Okay, so let's see. We've got Chicago. We've got San Francisco. Hey, Cliff, good to see you. I just saw you a couple weeks ago. Jim's back. When you asked earlier what I was advice would I Oh, that is too funny. Jim, thanks for clearing that up. That's hilarious. He was in the call earlier, everybody. Alabama's here, New Jersey. Anybody else? Come on, man. There's a bunch more of you on the phone. I know I haven't done all of this, so got to help me out. I want to see those highs. Come on, it's not going to hurt you just to type the highs in. Keep me busy. L.A. Oh, Jeremy. How you doing, buddy? Golly, I haven't seen you in a long time. That's great. It's like all my guys who've been around for a while, they're like, nah, I'm not going to say hi to Bob. You know, but I got to say, if you say hi to Bob, then I actually know that you're here and you're paying attention, and we're not doing this whole thing in vain. This is our second time today doing this. Wow, here you guys go. Ready? Kona. Don's calling in from Kona, Hawaii. So we've got Kona, we've got Australia, we've got Chicago, Colorado Springs, Santa Rosa, more Florida. Let's see, who else do we have here? And Lena. Hi, Lena. We know where she's from. All right, enough said. Let's go ahead and get started, guys. So I'm back. You guys are going to love this, and please write a couple things down. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, I've got two folks that I interviewed on my inner circle the other night, and I'm going to give them a little bit of airtime with you guys as well. One is a lady who buys commercial non-performing notes and does the workout on them. Let me give you an example. Her big deal to date so far, and I'm just using this because I know the numbers, they bought a $9 million note for $4.5 million, and they reduced the principal and allowed the current payer on the note to refinance at $7 million. They forgave $2 million in debt. So he was really happy because he started out owing $9 and he ended up owing $7, and they're real happy because they got paid off at $7 on a note that they bought for $4.5. And they work with private investors. They work with not private lenders, but equity investors and also debt lenders as well to do these things. But really, really cool. It's fascinating. Someone's been in the business for 20 years. So everybody's like, ooh, the note business. Well, you don't know the note business like this lady knows it when it comes to buying default paper from banks. Second thing is I'm going to be interviewing in the next couple of weeks a guy who has his own lending company. He's a commercial lender. But what's cool about him is that they are now loaning money to businesses. It's based on your personal credit, but it doesn't go against your personal credit report. So it goes against your business. It's non-recourse, and it's unsecured debt, which is really, really cool. So you can actually borrow through a business entity, so they can't come back at you. They have to go back after the business, number one. And number two, you can use the money for anything you want. For instance, like investing in tax liens, or buying a property that needs fixing up, or investing with me in Indianapolis, whatever, like that little cheap plug there, that shameless plug. So anyway, that's what's going on, and so we're really excited about that. Now, as far as tonight is concerned, here's what I want you guys to do. I want you to pay attention, because I learned stuff on this, and guys who've been doing this for a while learn. Shade and Skylar are very, very, very knowledgeable. They've been doing this for quite some time. I'm going to actually turn this over to them and let them show you pictures of themselves and what they've been doing for a while. I'm on. This is not a big sales webinar. Do they have a product where you can join up with them at the end and learn more about the business? Absolutely. But it's not going to be like an hour-long pitch for that. I mean, it's a product that they've got. It's $499, and I think it's worth it. So I just got the pink elephant out of the room, Shade. You don't have to worry about it. Shade. These guys are also teachers. They're not sales guys. So if you want the slick presentation where it's like a total sales presentation, go listen to, I don't know,
Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins or Ted Thomas or somebody. These guys are teachers. They're both teachers. And that's probably why we connected, because I'm a teacher at heart and so are they. And so you're going to learn a tremendous amount, okay? Third thing is this. A lot of you are going to have questions. We love questions. Write them down. Do not raise your hand. Write them down, and we will get to them. There's a couple of spots in the webinar. There's an actual break that we can use where we can answer some questions, or we can wait till the end to answer them. So if you think about them, go ahead and type them in, but understand that we're not going to deviate from what we're trying to teach you to answer the questions right then and there unless they're pertinent with that particular point. Otherwise, we're just going to go on. And that way you won't be on the call for 2 hours like our folks were this morning. Okay? Let's see. Okay, California City Doug. Awesome. All righty. Super, super, super. We got a couple repeats from this morning. So what I'm going to do is this. I am going to, Shade, I am making you the presenter here. So guys, everybody on this watching this is going to see the screen shift over, and you'll see Wednesdays with Bob again. That's not a technical error. It's just that Shade has not decided to show his screen. And speaking of the elephant in the room, back up, buddy. Back up. I got to give them grief. I got to give you grief about this. Go ahead. There it is. I don't know if you could slide that other thing out of the way, but yes, there is an elephant. It's an African elephant, for that matter. There's the elephant in the room. Whatever. All right, let's go ahead and get started on the thing here. Go ahead and go full screen. There we go. All righty. Quickly, how I met these guys a couple weeks ago. Actually, it's longer than that. It's been about 6 weeks. I was working with Pablo. A lot of you guys know my partner, Pablo, and he and I do a lot of investing together. And he said, hey, have you ever thought about tax liens? And I said, nah. And understand, the guys I know that teach tax liens, a couple of them are pretty slimy. And so I've just steered away from it because who these guys are. It's just, it is what it is. And he said, well, there's some pretty cool things. And I said, well, have somebody call me. It was just more of a courtesy to Pablo because he's a great guy and we're good friends. And I have a lot of respect for him. So anyway, long story short, he hooked us up on a conference call with me, Shade, and Skylar, and their third partner. And I got off the phone really impressed. Impressed because these guys do the business every day. They know the business all across the country. They're actually acting as fulfillment for some of the other big, huge companies. But they don't want to do that. So I figured, why not, rather than bring a Jeff Adams type person on and have him sell you a product for $3,000 and have these guys fulfill it, let me just go right to the guys, and we'll cut out the middlemen. So what you're hearing from tonight is you're hearing from guys who taught this for years, who invest themselves, and who are not ashamed to say that the money that they make off of seminars they use to invest in tax liens. So is what it is. So without any further ado, you see their pictures on the screen. Mr. Skylar Fishback on the right, and Mr. Shade Ferre on the left. And there you go. Shade, take it away, buddy. Or Skylar, whoever. Go for it.
Either one. No, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, Bob. You've been fantastic. And Bob is exactly right. We're not professional salesmen, not really slick, but the one thing we do know really well is the training and the teaching side of it, and also the investing side of it. I should probably give everybody a little bit of background and also give Skylar the chance to introduce himself. He's somebody that I've known for a long time.
Yeah, you bet. Really excited to be here. I mean, the coolest thing is Bob's you've been fantastic to work with. One thing that Shade and I love is this environment, is tax liens and tax deeds, and we've really tried to simplify this process. It's a crazy game. There's really no consistency across the board with it, but what we've tried to do is just simplify it and try to have fun with it. I mean, that's the biggest and the best part about the game. And so, again.
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I was going to give everybody some history because I think it's important to kind of understand what it is that we do, and from there, then it's you can decide whether or not it's worth listening to us. I started off with Tax Liens and Deeds back in about 2003 with my business partner, the third person that Bob mentioned, Steve. We're cousins. We were growing up. He was working as a real estate agent, and we were just young kids at the time. But he heard about tax liens, and I think we were in the same boat as everybody else, and that is they always sound really good. The things you do here. And so we set out trying to learn, probably no different from most people, other than 10 years ago, it was harder to find information. And so we eventually started attending auctions because we were confused. Attending auction was the trick, though. That was really what taught us how to do it. We had to teach ourselves because the system was so confusing. But we figured it out that way, and eventually we ended up creating some training. Now, Bob mentioned that we provide training even for some of the big companies out there. And that's actually what we've been doing since we were established, is almost primarily we only provide training for all these seminar companies. That's what we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. But what we're doing now is we're reaching out, working directly with people, working directly with investors, so that we can cut out the middleman, kind of like Bob said. So that's one thing we've been doing here over the last 3 to 4 months, and the idea behind it is if we cut out the middleman, it allows us to provide the same quality training, but for a lot lower price to the investor. So that is kind of the history behind what we've done. We've worked with students in probably every state in the country. In fact, as Bob was mentioning off all the different names and the people that were around, we've had students, and we've even worked in just about all these different parts of the country. I noticed there were even a few international people, and we even we work with international investors as well that want to invest and buy tax liens here locally. So we're not new to this, but we do love the training and the teaching side of it. That's what we specialize in, and that's what we're good at. Okay. I think the best place for us to probably start here, and Skylar and I will kind of go back and forth, but we want to talk about some facts about tax liens and deeds, because there's a lot of confusion out there about what they are and how they work, basically. In fact, just as a quick side note here for everybody, the reason why tax liens have always been so confusing, just so everybody knows, is because there isn't any kind of a uniform system in the U.S. to say this is how things are done. There's actually 50 different systems in the U.S. to say this is how things are done, and it changes wherever you go. So it's been confusing for many, many years. What we wanted to do is to create a system that would simplify that, make it so that the average person can understand how it works, and it can take advantage of the benefits. So let's talk about what exactly the benefits are, what's realistic, what can you do with it, what can't you do with it, and is it something that works for everybody, or is it something that only works for some people? Couple of facts. Number one, tax liens earn interest rate returns ranging from 12 to 24%. That's just the range that the tax liens, basically what you can earn. In other words, those may sound like pretty high interest rate returns, and they are, but that's just simply a matter of what states offer as far as the maximum interest rate return that you can earn. It ranges between 12 and 24%, which is excellent.
Well, it's also shade a lot better than what our bank is willing to pay us on a CD, right?
Oh, in fact, during the break, I went over to Wells Fargo's bank to see like what their accounts paid, and I grabbed the picture. But anyways, it was basically 0.2%, 0.3%, and even on a 5-year CD, it didn't get up above 0.5%. And that blew me away, that you could have your money locked up for 5 years and still only be making maybe a percent and a half if you're lucky. It is not an easy way to make money, and I think that there are a lot of people out there that have a fair amount of money just sitting there right now that they know they could be investing, and that's part of the crowd that we typically teach. Those are the investors that we talk to. They know that they want to do something with that money. They know it's not earning anything right now, but they're not sure what to do with it. That's one group. The other group are the people that are trying to build up some kind of capital to work with, to get started with. Fact number 2, tax lien investing can now be 100% online. You'll hear us talk a lot about why now is such a unique time with tax lien and deed investing. But for the first time in history, you can invest in tax liens 100% online, meaning that in the past that was absolutely impossible, obviously before the internet. But even the ability just to do it the way you can do it now completely online has really only existed for a few years. Another fact, tax liens, you hear the term tax lien all the time, but it's actually just one of 3 property tax enforcement systems that are used inside the U.S. So what that means is if you can learn how 3 systems operate, then you'll understand how property taxes are enforced everywhere in the U.S. You'll basically understand how you can invest in tax sales anywhere. So the 3 systems, we have tax liens, tax deeds, and redemption deeds. Now, before everybody gets too confused, because really we want to keep things, and we only have a limited amount of time with you. So just remember this, basically. The only thing that's important for everybody here to remember is that you have two options, essentially, as a person getting started with tax liens and deeds. The first is property acquisition, which, that might be the strategy that a lot of people are looking for. If you're looking for a way to earn lump sums of income quickly, or let's say you have a set amount of capital, so maybe you have $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 set aside to invest, then property acquisition would be the best route to go. The other option is to earn high interest rate returns on a long-term investment. So that's where we mean the interest rates 12 to 24%. That's the interest rate that we're talking about there. So as a student, as an investor, essentially, the idea is to consider those two options and to think about which one it is that you're after. Are you trying to grow and sustain wealth? Are you in that building phase right now where you're just trying to build up the working capital that you have? Those are kind of the questions to consider, but you'll know that if you're looking for property acquisition, then tax deeds are going to be the way to go. If you're looking for high interest rate returns, tax liens are the way to go.
And the great thing about both of these, Shade, is the fact that they complement each other so well. You acquire property, we build up, like you mentioned, that lump sum type income, but eventually we're going to want to learn how to diversify. And I believe that's what's so fantastic about tax liens and the high rate of return that they provide. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And we actually have a lot of students that do it. That is, they use tax deeds as a vehicle to kind of build up the working capital they have. And then once they have that capital there and they're looking for kind of a long-term investment, then they can switch over to a tax lien strategy where they're earning interest rate returns safely. So yeah, that makes perfect sense, and they do complement each other really well. Now, like I said, we want to make sure that people don't get confused, so we're going to keep things as simple as possible. If you've ever owned real estate before, you paid property taxes. You pay a property tax bill. We know that bill comes from a local county. What we may not know is why we pay that tax and what exactly that tax goes to pay for. So we pay taxes to the local government. They use that money to provide services. The biggest service is the public education system. Costs a lot of money. So the services are basically provided for by the property owners that live in the county. Now that all makes sense. It's a really simple money in, money out system. The question is, what happens if somebody doesn't pay their property taxes? Well, everybody's late sometimes with their property taxes, and that's just a normal part of life, I think. However, if there are enough people and they're late enough paying their property taxes, like let's say 10% of the population didn't pay their property taxes, that would create a budget deficit for the county. And the problem is the county has to pay bills constantly. So if the county has a big bill coming up and they don't have enough money to cover it, they have to borrow it. And that expense ends up getting passed on to the property owners. So obviously there has to be some type of enforcement system in place. The truth is as honest as we all are about taxes, if there wasn't some kind of a consequence, we wouldn't pay it. So there has to be some kind of a consequence. Uncle Sam has to do something, to kind of make sure that we'll pay our taxes. And that's where these property tax enforcement systems come into play. So I told you before there were three systems. We said the tax liens, tax deeds, and then there's the third one there. I'll show you in a minute. The tax lien system is the first one I want everybody to understand. If you understand a few fundamentals about tax liens, then tax deeds, everything else will make sense. The first thing to understand is a lien. Okay, now a lien, there are lots of different types of liens. A lien itself is a type of legal claim. It's a legal claim that can be placed against property. Now, the idea is that it can utilize the property that's been placed against as collateral for some kind of a debt. Now, the lien also has some other attributes. It prevents the property owner from being able to transfer ownership as long as that lien exists against their property. It also eventually could lead to a loss of property if the lien isn't removed within a set period of time. And that period of time is called a redemption period. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. But what's important to remember is this. There are lots of different types of liens out there. A mechanic's lien is a fairly common lien. That is the type of lien that somebody like a construction worker would place on a property if they didn't get paid. So if you were building a home and you didn't pay the painter, then what would happen is at the throughout the construction process, once that's finished, then you have the closing of the home, which is actually where you transfer ownership. Well, because the painter went down and issued a mechanics lien against the property, which they would go down to the county to do that, but they would issue a lien against the property, but because that lien was there, you wouldn't be able to close on that property until it was removed. So you would have to make sure that bill's taken care of, then the county would remove it, and then you could close on the property. Well, the county utilizes a lien as well. They utilize what they call a tax lien. Now, the tax lien is for the amount that's owed in delinquent taxes plus fees. So, if somebody owed $800 in property taxes, as they're late, as penalties and fees accrue, let's say it's $1,000 total tax lien. Okay, so the county places this lien against the property once it becomes delinquent to a certain point. So by placing that lien against the property, the county's done a number of things. Number one, property owner can't sell it. Number two, the redemption period will begin, and I'll talk more about that. And also, there's the possibility that property could be foreclosed on because of these delinquent taxes. Now, what happens most of the time? People are late paying their property taxes all the time. It's not unusual at all. The majority of the time, at some point, they come up with the money and they pay off their tax bill. The later it is or the longer it takes them to pay it off, the more they have to pay in penalties and fees. For the county, they have one objective here, and only one thing is really important to them. They just want to collect the money that's owed to them in taxes and fees. So the way they do this is by holding an auction. So they're going to schedule a tax sale. They're going to release a list of all of the liens that they just created, and they're going to offer them to the public through an auction. When somebody buys a tax lien, so the buyer here would pay the county $1,000 for this tax lien. Why would they do that? Well, there are a few different reasons for that. Number one is because tax liens pay out an interest rate return. Now, that interest rate return can range anywhere from 12 to 24%, or it could be lower. It all depends on what the how exactly you buy it. But typically, 12 to 24% is what the states have set up as their maximum. Also, when that lien is purchased, it begins accruing interest immediately. So in this example, we're saying that this lien is earning 18% annually. That would be 1.5% per month. So immediately, when this lien is purchased, it immediately that day begins accruing interest. The second thing that happens is the redemption period begins. Now, what exactly is the redemption period? When the lien was created, there was a redemption period attached to it. The redemption period is the time period that the property owner has to pay off their taxes before they risk losing their property. So think of it kind of like a grace period for the property owner. They don't have to worry about losing their property during that time. So if it's 2 years, they don't have to worry about losing their property for 2 years at least. For the investor, that represents the time period that they have to wait before they can take some kind of action. So they may have to wait for 2 years before they could take action. Now, there are two possible outcomes for the investor, okay? And I think this is probably the easiest way to keep this simple. Remember, there are two possible outcomes. Number one, and by the way, they both depend on the property owner and whether or not they pay. Okay, they either pay the county or they don't pay. And that gives us two possible outcomes as an investor. Either you're going to make a high interest rate return from the county, meaning that the property owner pays off their taxes. Once the county gets the money from the property owner, they'll remove the lien from the property, cut a check to the investor for their initial investment plus the interest rate return they've earned up to that point. Okay, so the other option is that they don't pay and that redemption period comes to an end. When that redemption period expires, that lien, which up to this point has just been a dormant lien against the property, you couldn't really take action with it. Once that redemption period expires, that lien can actually be used to initiate the foreclosure process on that property. So as the foreclosure process is initiated, it comes down to the same question again: will the property owner or owners pay or not pay? If they pay, then the property is, the lien's removed. If they don't, the property is foreclosed on. And the property is actually awarded to the lien holder, who becomes the new property owner. So let me just give everybody an idea of what that would look like if this were to redeem. So we said this was a $1,000 tax lien. Okay, if a $1,000 tax lien, let's say that it took, let's say 6 months. 6 months is the easiest one for math. Okay, if it took the property owner 6 months to redeem that, or to pay the county what they owe in taxes and fees, if that occurred after 6 months, then once they kind of receive those funds, they would cut the check to the investor, and the check would be for $1,000, which was for the initial amount of the investment, plus 6 months worth of interest at 18% annually. Well, what's 6 months worth of interest at 18% annually? It's going to be exactly half of that, or 9%. 9% of $1,000 would be $90. So the total amount of the check would be $1,090. That's what the investor would receive. If they don't receive that check, which then the only other option there is that the property, the redemption period expires and the property is foreclosed on. Now, I know we always get a lot of questions right here, and I'm sure that there are people that probably have a ton of questions. But the most common question that I wanted to address, that people always wonder about, is this. What about the mortgage? Or what about some of these nice homes? Why would the mortgage company just let the property be foreclosed on? Or the question sometimes is, if I were to buy this, am I then responsible for the mortgage? How exactly does that work? And it's a really good question. It would be the first concern that I would have. At least it's the one that I used to have the most. But there's a really simple answer for it. The answer is this. If there's a lender that's involved in this situation, which there usually is when it comes to something like a single-family home, well, I guess the first thing I want to preface it with is this. The majority of the time, properties are not foreclosed on. The majority of the time, when it comes to single-family homes that have a lien placed against them, they usually almost always end up redeeming. And that's for simple reasons. Nobody wants to lose money, and nobody wants to lose money because of delinquent property taxes. Property taxes are usually low enough that somebody will find a way to pay it off. So most of the time that doesn't happen, but that doesn't mean that it never happens, because it does. And there are a lot of circumstances, weird circumstances sometimes surrounding why a property might go to foreclosure. A lot of times they're properties that they could have somehow been a part of some type of an estate sale, or maybe some kind of weird circumstance like that. A lot of times they're vacant, or they've been vacant for a while. Whatever it is. Either way, with a mortgage company here, let's me get back on track here before I get too far off track. Why does the mortgage company not matter, or how do they play into this? Well, that's exactly what I wanted to bring up, Shade, is the idea behind what position or the positioning of a tax lien, on a property itself. Go ahead. Yeah, that's a really good question here. Well, first off, let's establish this. Property taxes are a bill that are owed on that property regardless of who owns it. Okay, so they're always going to be owed on it, and if there's a delinquent property tax bill that's owed, it doesn't matter who is responsible. It's just owed on the money. It's owed on the property. And that property has the ability to be foreclosed on because of delinquent property taxes. Now, with a mortgage company, even though they're the borrower in this situation, they're actually an owner, just like the borrower was. So we have two people here. We have the person that borrowed the money, and we have the borrower. They're both lenders. They're both owners of the property in this situation. Foreclosure is the process that you go through. It's an actual legal process, but it's the process you go through to foreclose on the property owner's rights to their property, meaning you are going through a legal process to remove their rights from that property, and what that involves is a foreclosure notice. So when the redemption period expires, a foreclosure notice is going to be sent out to every party that has interest in that property. So that's going to include the mortgage company. That's going to include the owner, and if there's anybody else, if there was a second mortgage, it would include them as well. That mortgage company is going to get that mortgage, that foreclosure notice, just like the property owner will, and they have the option to pay that off. But just like the property owner, if nobody steps forward to pay off that amount, then that property will be foreclosed on, even if there was a mortgage. Now, what happens to the mortgage? Well, the mortgage itself, that loan would still exist between the borrower and the lender. The difference is once foreclosure happens with that property, the property is foreclosed on, awarded to a new owner, and it's no longer attached to that loan. So the borrower and lender, they still have that loan between themselves, but they no longer have the property securing it. So the main point I want to get across is this. We see single-family homes that are up at auction all the time, but it's not the norm. It's not the thing that happens in most cases. In most cases, people don't lose their property to property taxes. Most of the time, it's a great system that works out well and provides benefits to everybody that's involved. If you think about it, it's a pretty ingenious system. You have the county who gets the money they need to continue to operate. You've got the property owner who gets a type of grace period, so they don't have to worry about losing their property. And you get the investor that makes a great return on a really good investment. So it's an ingenious system in that way. Now, we're going to burn through this last part here pretty quickly because I want to take the time to be able to show you some things actually on websites and show you some actual examples. Second system, tax deeds. This one will take us 10 seconds to describe. Tax deeds are properties that have been foreclosed on by the county due to delinquent taxes. Okay, so we have tax liens, tax deeds, and we have these redemption deeds. By the way, something else I should also tell everybody is this. The reason why we have three different systems, tax lien, tax deed, redemption deed system, is because those are the systems that different states have chosen to use. Property taxes are a part of state law. So state law is what gives the county or the right to taxes. The state law is also what describes how they enforce the tax. So as to whether or not a specific county uses a tax lien, tax deed, or redemption deed system, that all depends upon their state laws. So you'll find that we talk about states and we'll refer to them as being tax lien states or tax deed states. And what that means is that that state utilizes liens or deeds. That's also why tax liens are so confusing, because you have 50 different states and you have 50 different sets of state laws, and everybody's laws are a little bit different, and there isn't a uniform system. And so, anyway, that's why it's confusing, but that's also why it's important to have the three systems that we talked about, that uniform system of training, so that once you understand and know that, you can work in any part of the country and be familiar with how they operate. Same deal too. Counties sell properties that they foreclosed on to recover delinquent property taxes. The key here, though, is that the opening bid for those properties is going to be the total amount that was owed in taxes and fees. So we're talking about maybe 2-3 years worth of taxes. It's going to be an amount that is much lower than what you would ever find at any other type of foreclosure auction. When we think about foreclosures, we usually think about bank foreclosure. Somebody doesn't pay their mortgage and they lose their property, and then the bank auctions it off at a foreclosure. Well, at a bank foreclosure, the bank is trying to get as much money as they can because every penny they don't collect is costing them. With a tax foreclosure, it's different because the county doesn't have that personal interest involved. They don't care if the property sells for $50,000 or for $5,000, as long as that $5,000 covers what's owed in delinquent taxes. So that's one of the benefits you have with tax deeds and tax foreclosures, is that the county doesn't have a personal interest involved, and therefore you can pick properties up for a low price. It's really dependent upon the competition, other people you're bidding against, and that can vary and range quite a bit.
And also, Shade, and how the auctions are held are going to be different state to state, and obviously tax deed to tax lien. In a tax lien auction, they're not going to bid the principal of the property up. In a tax lien auction, they're going to bid the interest rate down to the lowest bidder who's willing to accept that interest. And then in a tax deed system, that's where they bid the principal up. Like you said, the county just wants to collect what's owed in delinquent taxes, period.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that is, they've got to have some kind of an auction system when they go to sell these off. So, in counties that have the interest rate and the liens, they can offer that to the person that wants to accept the lowest interest rate. For a deed, though, when they're selling the property, they can sell that just to the highest bidder because they're selling the property, outright. But what's neat, though, is that we can teach students methods, strategies they can use so that they always make the maximum interest rate return that they can earn in that state. there's strategies where you can utilize that, where even if there is competition, you don't have to deal with that. There are ways to get around dealing with the competition and still being able to make money with it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on redemption deeds because there's so many other things that I want to talk about, and the truth is that we could confuse you with a lot of this stuff about redemption deeds and kind of what they are. There's some good opportunities, but just not enough time right now. The truth is, this is the only thing you really need to worry about, and that is you've got two options, two things to consider as an investor, and that is which one is it that you're really after? What are you what phase in your investing are you in? Are you trying to build up that working capital, or are you trying to sustain and grow it? And that's where your options are going to come down. Which actually, that reminds me, we have, well, one of the things that we've done a little bit differently, and that we set out to do. In the beginning, when I started, I was so frustrated. I read so many books, I bought so many programs, and everyone seemed to just regurgitate and say the same things over and over again, and it didn't really allow me to grasp how it worked, and it didn't tell me how to get started. We wanted to change that as we started to work with investors, and so we created a system called the Investor Profile System. The idea behind it is really simple. Everybody has different resources. Everybody has different objectives. Let's figure out what your objectives and your resources are, and from there, let's help you pick out which strategy is going to work out best for you. We've got a number of different strategies that students can choose from. Once they select one strategy and say, okay, investor profile number 2, that's my strategy. That's what I want to do. Once they know that, there's a list of states where they can utilize that specific strategy. So we've got this funneling process where students that may normally not know where to begin or what to do, well, they have these nice little steps they can go through because now they know what their strategy is, which states they can begin with, and that's where they go to access the student website, which is where we store all of our tax sale lists so we have lots of tax lien lists, tax deed lists. We've got, I think, over 100,000 tax deeds, tax liens on our database, and more than 50,000 tax deeds that are on the database. So our students don't have to go out there and try to find these lists because they're right there available. Now, actually, what we're going to do here, we're going to talk about this is about the point here we wanted to jump in and do a few live things here and show everybody. Because obviously, Bob mentioned earlier that we've got training that's available. We can show that here in a minute, but we wanted to talk about what some of our students are doing right now, and just some of the opportunities that are out there. Okay, this was one that really came in recently. I think, Skylar, this is a student that you're pretty familiar with.
Yes, this is Elise. She lives in Florida, and she's an older lady. She's about I don't know. She's in her retirement age, and she was. It took us a while to kind of help her. Going back to what you were talking about before, determine her investor profile. And her investor profile, this is something I think is important for people to understand. It's deeper and it's more in depth than just what's your bank account or how much money do you have. One thing for her is she was very, very timid to invest outside of her backyard. One thing we really try to help people understand is cash-on-cash returns. And so, Shade, we're going to go through and show people within Property Tax List the auction calendar, but she found this specific property in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places. So she lives in Florida. She purchased this property online at an auction, I believe it was through Bid for Assets, and this is a perfect example of, there's certain areas of the country where there's going to be more competition than others. But the great thing about real estate is that it's solid, it's tangible, and people need it. And so she was able to pick up this single-family home here in Birmingham, Alabama. Purchase price, her opening bid on that was $1,719, and she had no competition against her, and she picked up the property for $1,700. And it's a good example of the type of properties that are out there. Another thing that I wanted to kind of hit home, I guess, as well, is when we acquire distressed property like this, it gives us the ability to get in and out of deals quickly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We want to get in and out of these deals quickly, especially for the type of investor who has limited capital. We want to teach these students how to go out there, acquire these properties, get them back out on the market, market them the right way, but also, put together your business, whether you're looking to run a business or build capital or just get that higher rate of return. The greatest thing about it is being able to have a one-stop shop.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that she didn't have another bidder. I mean, it's not like she bought it at some type of, an over-the-counter list or something like this. She bought that just at an auction, online auction, placed the bid, and there wasn't any competition, to even increase. I mean, that was the opening bid amount. That was what was owed in taxes, penalties, and fees. That was the minimum amount that the county was willing to accept, and that's still the amount that it sold for. And if that sounds appealing, we come across lists all the time of tax liens or tax deeds that were offered at an auction but didn't sell. Okay, so in other words, they were offered. It could mean that somebody bid on it but they didn't pay, or it could mean that nobody bid on it. It could mean a lot of things. But the point is that we find property, sometimes even single-family homes, that didn't even get an opening bid, that are now sitting on the over-the-counter list. Now, what's even more exciting about that is that these properties that are sitting there can be purchased just simply by paying, the amount that's owed. So in other words, if this home hadn't sold at the auction and it had just gone back onto the books, somebody could go through a list, see that property there, pay the county $1,719, and become the owner of that property without actually attending a sale. So we see those types of opportunities all the time. It's an amazing time to get involved because the internet has just opened up the floodgates. So, there's still a lot of mystery surrounding tax liens and what they are and whether they're legitimate or did they work, when in reality, they've been working for a long time and now they're more accessible than they've ever been before. All right, I think I've got, all right, I'm going to, there's my elephant here. I want to show you a few things so that you can kind of get an idea or a feel for how we do it.
Yeah, and by the way, if you guys were on the call earlier today, you guys did not get to see this. We talked about it between times. So you guys are my evening group are seeing this for the first time. Actually, everybody's seeing it for the first time. So anyway, this part they saw.
Awesome. Okay, so I've zoomed in here, so I'm hoping everybody can see this here. This is the student website, propertytaxlist.com, but the purpose in us creating it was, number one, so that we could provide a place for our students to get lists, because that is a really time-consuming aspect of the investment if you're not sure where to look. So we basically do that for our students. And from there, the other reason was because we needed to have a place where our students could go to access training materials, where they could do replays and things like that, and that was what this site was all about. But Skylar mentioned earlier the auction calendar, okay? So the auction calendar is actually right here. It's going to ask me here for my login. Okay, so the auction calendar looks like this, okay? What you can see here is that we have a whole bunch of different dates for auctions that are scheduled to take place, and these are auctions taking place all over throughout the country, okay? Not just in one area, but anywhere. Counties will hold auctions typically at a minimum usually once a year. Some counties will hold auctions once a month or sometimes almost every week, depending on how they do things. But at a bare minimum, usually it's once a year. So when that sale comes around, we can get that list provided here for students. And as a student, if you want to participate in an upcoming auction, you can always take a look at the auction calendar and figure out where exactly, which auction you're interested in investing in. For investors, this is probably one of the handiest tools when it comes to just figuring out what you want to do, because you can see what's coming up and you can download the list right here. Now, some other things that we have that our students do. So, for instance, let me kind of show everybody an example of what we would do if we were looking at investing in an auction. So, I mentioned earlier, well, actually, no, not on this one. There's another one. Riverside County, California. Riverside County, California has an auction that is scheduled for the 25th, tomorrow. And they're conducting that auction through an online auction provider called Bid for Assets. Now, what's neat about this is we're seeing entire states that are, county by county, are moving over to these online auction systems. And that's fantastic for us because it just means more opportunities. For Riverside County, this allows us to do a couple different things here. We have, let let me also jump over here. We also have an internet auctions page as well, where you can just, get to any of the internet auctions, that are taking place for, so for instance, alphabetical order, Arizona, California, and here is Riverside County. So on the other one I clicked on, that's going to open up a list, the tax list, and this is the actual online link. This is the online page for the Riverside County, California auction. Now, what I want to show you here is this. As we scroll down, what we're looking at here are different properties that are available. And the list is available in a number of different ways. If I wanted to, I can kind of show you here what an actual list will look like and the way that we would work off a list like this. Okay, so this is a tax sale list. And
hey, Shade, could you make it just a tiny bit larger? Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I'm going to keep zooming in here until I'm hoping that it gets big enough that everyone can kind of see it.
There we go.
We won't get too stuck in the details with this anyway, but wanted to kind of give everybody an idea of how it works. So the county releases a list like this, and based on the information that's provided on this list, you can get an idea of what kind of a property is you're looking at. In other words, are you looking at a property that is vacant land, or is it something with improvements on it, like a single-family home? And as you can see, right here, you can see there's a designation for vacant right here. So the idea behind this is we teach you how to kind of scroll through a list like this and begin to identify some potentially good investments. Once you identify some of these potentially good investments, then we kind of teach you how to begin doing online research and due diligence. So I'll kind of show you an example here of how we would do that. And let's see here. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm looking right now at a physical address for a specific property. Now this property, it looks like it has an opening bid of about $7,000. So let me see if I can kind of highlight this so you can see what I'm talking about. This property right here has an opening bid of $7,000, and you probably can't see that. The assessed value appears to be about $87,000. That's the total assessed value. So $87,000 total assessed value. The improvements are supposed to be worth about $27,000. Land value $60,000. That's how it comes to $87,000 total assessed value. But $7,000 is not a very high opening bid if this is a single-family home. So we can take a look and see exactly what it is. And that's where a lot of the modern-day tools here come in such handy. So we're going to copy that. This is in Corona, California. So there's a number of things we can do here. First, even simple tools now can just do amazing things. Let me get this. So what I did here was I copied that address and I pasted it in there. And by the way, the website that I'm at right now is Google. I just went to Google and I went to the Google Maps. This is a really easy first stop that we make sometimes because of this tool specifically, and that is just the street image, the street viewfinder. Which if you've never used it before, when you type in an address like the one I've typed in here, on the left-hand side, if Google has a street side image of the property, then it'll come up here on the left-hand side. So I can click on this. And what it does is it pulls up a street side image of the property. Now this is absolutely amazing. I mean, I'm amazed by this every time I do it because it saves so much time compared to what we could do just a few years ago. But this is the property right here that we're talking about. So we know this property has a $7,000 opening bid. This is for an auction that's scheduled to begin tomorrow. So $7,000 opening bid, we know it's worth about $87,000 is the assessed value. What's neat about this tool is that we can move around the neighborhood and we can see what this neighborhood looks like, get a feel for the area. We can also try to determine what the value of the property is, which would be one of the steps that we would take from this point. So if we're going to do that, and this will probably be the last thing we'll do with this particular property, Zillow.com is a really easy website to use if you're trying to get a rough estimate on property valuation. You see, we're not really concerned about what the exact value of the property is, and there's reason for that. As a tax deed investor, we're looking at this from a wholesale perspective. Okay, so as Skylar mentioned earlier, he talked about our ability to turn these over very quickly. And the idea is this: if you pick up a property for a low enough price, your options are wide open. You can sell that property as quickly as you want because you can act as a wholesaler if you'd like. So the idea would be you pick it up for a low price, you can unload it to another investor, and they can be the ones to spend the time with the property, fixing it up if they want. For you, you make the money because you have the skill and know how to find these types of properties and buy them. That's kind of the idea behind it, behind being a wholesaler. Now, this particular property is valued at $167,000 right now. So I don't know what this property will go for. And by the way, they're not all this good. Like, I'm just thinking here, the last example I had was really good too. But this is what you can find. I would say that if we were talking about average numbers here. So this one's $7,000, estimated value $167,000. I don't know what the property will sell for, but it's not uncommon for us to find properties that have an opening bid that's less than 10% of what it's worth. So if you figure you can learn how to find property consistently for 10% of what it's assessed to be worth. That's really what tax deeds are all about. That's why we feel like it's a good opportunity to acquire properties, because 10% leaves a lot of room for profitability and it gives you a lot of options. Okay, now let me see how we're doing here time-wise. Okay, now why don't we do a couple of things here. You know what? It might actually be a good time for us to take some questions before I jump back into the slides, because I know that people probably have questions, things that they would like to know about tax liens and deeds, or maybe things that don't make sense. If there's anything like that, feel free to send those questions away, and we'll go ahead and answer them.
There we go. We got questions starting to come in too. And you guys teach all of this in your you teach people all of this, people who actually invest with you and get the program. And don't you? I mean, you guys have what, 5 manuals and like a 13-week telephone course?
Yeah, we have everything set up for the person. We call it a home study course, but it's really more than that because it's not really about doing it by yourself at all. There are 5 manuals, but aside from the manuals, we hold live webinar trainings every single week that our students can come to. We record all of those, so you can watch it later if you're not able to make it to one. All of our students have access to the website, and that also includes hotline and email support. So they can access all the lists they want, they can access support for questions, and they can replay any of these live training webinars. Really, it's everything that I think a student needs to go out there and to be successful. The success stories that we get are based on nothing more than just the same package, same type of a training program, which is why we have it set up the way it is.
So let me ask you this. I mean, I'm going to lift off a couple of questions. Unless, Skylar, you want to read the questions. You and I are looking at the same ones, buddy.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. One right here is definitely relevant to what we're talking about. It says, this one's from Bernard. He says, if you buy a tax deed, what if the house is trash? Does it happen? It can happen. But what Shay just got done going through there with you is the idea of understanding how to do the proper research and due diligence on a tax sale list. And when you have the information, or the accurate information to do your due diligence, it just allows you to make that educated decision on the property. Now, are we always going to know what's happening inside these properties? No, we're not. Now, is there ways to find out what's going on inside the properties by getting what we call boots on the ground? You bet. And that's something that we teach our students how to do. But again, it's all about doing the research and effectively looking at the lists. And does every tax sale list provide the property address? And the answer to that is no, they don't. And so there's some additional steps that are needed to be taken, such as counties now have what's called the parcel ID search tool available on county websites, which we leverage to find that information to get that property address. But like Shay just showed you right there, I mean, the idea that we can take an entire virtual tour of a neighborhood from my computer at home is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I also, it's a really good question that we get all the time, that same question. What about, what if a property's trash, what about this and that? But something to consider as well, and it takes almost kind of a change in mindset. It takes a little while, to be honest with you, to start to think as a wholesaler. But consider this. Let's say that I was going to sell you a Ferrari for $3,000, okay? If I was going to sell you a Ferrari for $3,000, would you care if it had a ding in the door, or if one of the rims, had some road rash or something?
Good point.
Whatever the problem was, as long as that thing could have been on fire and I would probably still buy it, for $3,000 because it's just such a good deal. And that's kind of the mentality that you need to have when it comes to wholesaling and something like tax deed. And that is, if you're only, if you can pick up a property for 10 or 15 or 20% of what it's worth, then, you can have some leniency for some of those things. But at the same time, you don't want to buy something that is just a disaster, inside, or you don't want to buy some kind of a major problem. And that's where what Skylar mentioned comes into play, and that is, there are ways to get around that. There are amazing things we can do now without ever leaving home. That doesn't mean, though, that there can't be other people that can also do that work for you, other ways to check out properties, other ways to get the information you find. So I think those are all really good points.
There's a couple of you guys have asked questions about what's the cost for the training, how do you get a log on to the website. We'll get to that in a minute. Actually, Skylar, if you don't mind typing the link in to the
yeah, not a problem.
And we'll go ahead and do that. And for those of you if you were on the webinar earlier, if you got on late, you missed. I told everybody right up front, these guys normally, their product is sold by promoters for $2 or $3 grand. And I just bypassed all the promoters and went right to them. And so if you want to jump in and get involved, it's $499. They may even have a payment plan. I'm not sure. So, but check it out, and he's going to. You'll see it right there on the right. Secrets of tax investing. You'll see it right there on the screen. And so, Roy, that's awesome, and Jim, that should take care of your questions. There were some other ones as well.
Yeah, in fact, just so the students, all the investors here with us know that we've got a page set up that is that gives a really detailed description of what what the program is. We didn't want this to be a big sales pitch, so we didn't really want to spend a lot of time. We figured that that those that were interested could click on the link and could kind of read the details about it. But as Skylar and I were preparing for this over the last couple of weeks, we wanted to do something else that would provide some added benefit and something that would be kind of fun for the people that are here involved. And so for anybody that joins the course today, we're going to put on what we're calling a property hunt workshop. The property hunt workshop is essentially where, well, for the last few minutes, you've seen how we went to a couple of different websites, pulled up some things. We're looking at some tax sale properties and doing some research that way. Well, the property hunt workshop is something very similar. We're going to go through and we're going to identify some of the best investments within some lists and help students see why. Help students see why those are the best and how they can duplicate that process. So the property hunt workshop is going to be awesome because it's probably going to be a small enough group that we'll be able to find properties for everybody there. So that it's not just a training, it's actually going to be something where you're going to walk away from this with some properties to look into.
You bet. You bet. Hey, here's another good question. It came out, how competitive is this market? Is there certain areas better than others, or do you point them out to your students? And Don, that's exactly the point of the Property Hunt Workshop, is we'll go through specific counties we believe to be great counties that have great deals in them and be able to show you how to go through that step by step.
The other thing that I just can't emphasize enough is this. We've all had times in the past where we kind of missed that big opportunity. We missed that chance, to invest in whatever company or chance to do whatever. Well, when it comes to tax liens and deeds, we are at a point in history right now where there's never been a better opportunity to get involved than right now. And what's happened is now that all these counties are online, now all these opportunities are online, and you don't have to travel to do it. Well, that's just multiplied the number of opportunities that are available. And so I think what's actually happened is the number of opportunities, the number of investors out there has increased, so has the number of opportunities. And I don't know if competition will be a factor down the road. It could be. But right now, it's not something that would prevent you from being successful with tax liens and deeds. I know that for sure.
Skylar, we've got some couple questions here that I think are similar to the ones we got this morning, and I think we have a couple that are doubled up. Roy's writing, if I purchase the first tax deed and there are 2 additional years of taxes that are purchased, if I wholesale the first year tax deed, will it be subject to those 2-year? What? Roy, I'm going to go ahead.
I think I understand the question that he's asking, Bob, because it probably is kind of similar to the question we got this morning about multiple liens. Do you think that's it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where we're at.
I'll see if I can make this one as simple as possible. Counties typically create a lien every year that there's delinquent taxes. So you buy a lien, it's going to represent 1 year of delinquent taxes. Well, what happens if you buy a lien and there's a 2-year redemption period? So you've got a couple of years to wait. Well, what happens the next year when they don't pay their property taxes again? And the answer to that is the first thing that happens is the counties typically will contact the person that purchased the first year lien and offer them the chance to buy the second lien as well. That's totally optional. You can buy it if you want. You don't have to buy it. As far as why you would buy it, number one, because the county's offering it to you before the auction, you're going to make the maximum interest rate return. So that's a benefit. But the other reason is if the redemption period were to expire and you wanted to foreclose on that property, okay, so if you were actually done with everything, you went through the foreclosure process and that property is now going to be foreclosed on and issued to you, before they'll issue it in your name, you have to make sure that the taxes are current, okay? Now, the reason why that's important is let's say that when the county offered you that lien, you passed it up and you said, I don't really have the money or I don't want to buy it right now. No problem. The county would just hold their auction and they would sell that lien off to another investor. He would buy that or she would buy that just like you did the year previous. So both of you are buying a similar type of a lien, but the difference is you bought your lien 1 year before they bought theirs. Both of them have the same 2-year redemption period. The difference is that your lien will redeem, the redemption period will expire 1 year before theirs does. So the idea is if the redemption period expires, then you initiate the foreclosure process, and at that point, the lien's either going to redeem or it's not going to redeem. But if it doesn't redeem and you do get the chance to foreclose on it, then that is the one qualification is taxes have to be current. So you would have to pay the county off the additional taxes that were owed in order to actually own the property. But by paying that, what you'd be doing is essentially paying off that other lien holder and their interest rate return. So it's actually something that works out positively. It adds to the overall security of the investment. I hope that kind of made sense and I didn't confuse people too much.
Rick's got a really cool question that we don't want to mix up apples and oranges here, Rick, but it says, doesn't it take a long time to foreclose in many states? And you guys have to understand that we're talking about a tax foreclosure, which is totally different than a mortgage foreclosure.
Yeah, and also, the foreclosure process, it's one of those weird things that is a state law, just like property taxes are a state law, and so foreclosure can be a little bit different from state to state. And that's why the duration or the length of the foreclosure will take a little while too. But the main point to remember is that you're earning interest rate during that entire time. So the longer the investment goes, the better, because it just means that it's more money that's going to be earning for you. That's even during that redemption period or during that foreclosure period. So if you filed for foreclosure and there was a 3-month period of time and then they paid, you'd still make money on that 3 months as well.
It's really funny. I don't know if you guys are noticing this, but we have people got on a little bit later tonight. We had a little bit less people on, but man, they're really into it. The questions are coming in like almost faster than we can answer them. So
yeah, I have a really cool question I'd like to mention here, Bob and Shade. It says, if you want to own property, I've been told that less than 1% of investors actually get the deed for ownership. Do you agree? Why or why not? Now, that's a perfect example of understanding your investor profile. One thing that we really focus on with the students we work with is if we're looking to get a high rate of return, we're going to focus on the states that we know and the type of properties that we know the homeowner is going to redeem. Therefore, we're going to get our interest rate back. If we're looking to do the property acquisition, then we're going to actually move toward a tax deed environment, knowing that we're going to take instant possession of that property at the tax sale. I hope that makes sense.
Hey,
yeah, I think that's a really good point too, and that is, the people don't really get too confused that we had kind of a slide that I think a lot of people may have missed that basically said your options are either to go for property acquisition or high interest rate returns. you can choose which one you want, but one is going to work best for the one and one's going to work best for the other. And the way that it works out is you may hear tax liens mentioned when it comes to a lot of things, but what we teach is that tax liens are an awesome way to earn high interest rate returns. But if you want to acquire property, tax deeds are the way to go. And that also coincides with where you're at as an investor. There are people that are trying to build up the working capital they've got. So they're saying, hey, I need to take this and make it into more so that I've got more, more investment capital. But then there are others that are saying, hey, I've been working on this retirement account for a long time, and I want to find a way to kind of grow this. Well, those two people have completely different objectives, but the nice thing about tax liens and deeds is that they're diverse enough that they can offer solutions for for all of those people. So for each one of those objectives.
Does if the homeowner declares bankruptcy, how does that affect if you own the tax lien?
Oh, it's a really good question. Actually, this was actually my biggest concern when I got started. I remember was I'm thinking, hey, if they're not paying their bills, then aren't they all going to be in foreclosure? In bankruptcy. And the answer to it is actually pretty interesting. First off, with tax deeds, it's not an issue because the deeds are simply the properties that have already been foreclosed on. So if the deed is available, it means that it wasn't a part of the foreclosure. The bankruptcy. So the deeds is not an issue. Now with tax liens, what would happen if you were to buy a tax lien and then somebody files for bankruptcy? What would happen? Well, we did a lot of research on it, and we actually we've dealt with it one time, and that is most of the time a lien is never included in the bankruptcy. Property taxes are a county tax, and the courts are a county thing, and so they just don't really normally eliminate that. But the worst case scenario, meaning even if they did for some reason, the worst case scenario is the county sends you a check for your initial investment back and the interest rate you would have earned up until the bankruptcy was filed. So,
that's pretty awesome.
And that's only happened that's happened once, and we're the only people that we're even aware of that it's ever happened to.
What we've got a couple questions that are actually tying together. Frank and Chris have these questions. Frank wants to know, once they get the course for $495, is there a monthly upkeep cost or anything, in the ancillary costs? And it also ties into what Chris is asking, which is, to actually purchase tax liens, not tax deeds, but, tax liens, or maybe even tax deeds. What do you think is a good amount of capital to start with? And by the way, both those questions are great in the fact that I can show you guys, and I've showed you on past webinars, how to raise that capital. But anyway, go ahead if you don't mind those two questions. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think they're both really good questions. In terms of an amount, Skylar talks with a lot of students on the hotline. I've talked with a lot. We have a lot of students that get started that have, I would say, they have less than 10,000 working capital to begin with. Now, that's not a lot of money, but the idea is it's just enough if you make your first investment decision right, or if we can show you a strategy where you can utilize a smaller amount of capital, then you can be successful with it. But I would say that if you've got something set aside, realistically, you can find low dollar. There are strategies out there for low capital situations that we can teach. So I would say that really almost any amount would work. But I would say that if you've got between 5,000 and 10,000, that's something we can work with.
Definitely.
What was the other question too? I forgot the other question. The first one.
Oh, what's a safe amount of working capital needed to start the business?
And then the second one was, are there any monthly costs? So once people get in the program, and do you guys have any in order to hang on with us and keep looking at all of our resources, we're going to charge you extra per month or that kind of thing?
The only thing we have, the training comes with 3 months of everything. If a student wants to continue, actually we have $29 they can pay, and that will maintain access to everything. So, in other words, they can still use the hotline, they can still use the website, they still get the weekly webinars and all of that. So there's a $30 a month fee that they can pay after that 3 months, but that's the only thing that happens.
So basically, they're going to jump on it for 3 months. They're going to learn everything they possibly can, find out all the resources you use, and if they want to continue to have you do it all for them or help them out, then they'll pay $30 a month. And if they want to do it on their own, they don't have to pay that $30.
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly.
Hopefully that answers all of that. And then I guess, Hendra, I'm going to answer your question here, buddy. Their group is not about buying tax liens from you. Hendra wants to wholesale tax liens to you. They can go out and find their own. This is, no offense, big guy. I mean, it's like, yeah, okay, so teach me how to find the same stuff that you find, and then will you buy them from me? No, that doesn't work that way.
What is actually an interesting concept or idea, though, is just the fact the wholesaling concept and doing that. What people need to know is that banks have been taking advantage of this for a long time. I remember, and it's not the internet has actually kind of hurt the banks when it comes to them lending, but 10 years ago when I started, one financial institution spent $300 million at a single tax sale auction in Florida. I remember that specifically one of the years that I started, and they're all doing it. So when you talk about wholesaling, there are groups that will wholesale buy tax liens, and they can do it because they know that they're going to earn an excellent rate of return in the long run.
So that really ties in, Shade, with Marilyn's question, which is, how do you compete against the industrial buyer at the sales?
That is a really good question too. And you know what? To be honest with you, we don't. That's one thing that we've done is we will simply find a new sale. The good news is that it was far more prevalent 10 years ago than it is today, and that's one of the advantages of the systems going online. Is that before, if one guy were to show up at the auction, he had a suitcase of $300 million in it, which I don't think it's even possible, but it meant that he could pretty much buy everything and he could undercut everybody and you couldn't compete. But with the internet, that's all changed, and that institutional bidder no longer has that kind of pull. So what's happening now is the institutional bidders are now forced to approach some of the small counties or jurisdictions directly, so we don't have to deal with them anymore. So it's not too often you have to deal with big major financial institutions or bidders, but the answer, I guess, to the question is there's 3,300 counties. We always figure that if we're dealing with something that's difficult somewhere else, it's always going to be easier to just move on.
Cool.
And I think that's a main question I deal with on the hotline is, understanding that there is, numerous, hundreds of different counties to select from. I mean, when you showed the different counties available that were having auctions and the lists available, I mean, you can download unlimited lists. I mean, we don't limit any of our students to the list that they can download or to any of the auctions that they can find information on, which makes it great. You get hung up on one county, you're not finding the information you need quickly, move on to the next one. That's the best part about it.
That's really awesome.
We have we basically, the idea that we have with students in the beginning is keep everything as simple as possible. And that's why we even say, hey, choose tax liens or choose tax deeds. And we want to keep things very simple because it's so easy to get off track in the beginning, and there's so many things that can slow you down or hang you up. What we want to see, and our objective is within that first 3 months, we want everybody to buy something. Because the fact of the matter is the first tax lien I bought was for $67, okay? $67, it was a cheap lien, and it still ended up redeeming, so I didn't even end up losing my money on it. But the $67 I would have gladly lost my money on because it was worth the experience of just buying something. And that's the mentality that we have with all of our students is just buy something, and then you'll release some of that fear that you have about it and start to build some confidence that it works.
Hey, Shade, we had a good question come through here really quick. I think this is definitely valid to what we're talking about. It says, this is from Hendra once again, and it says, what states of OTC databases are available on the website?
Oh, that's a really good question. OTC, by the way, just so everybody knows, OTC is the term we use for over-the-counter. When I mentioned earlier that there are some liens and some deeds that might get offered at the auction but not actually sell, they go back on the books. Those are what we call over-the-counter tax liens and tax deeds. What this question is about is asking us what states we have over-the-counter lists in. And the answer is we've got probably one of the largest, as far as I know, it is the largest over-the-counter database anywhere for tax liens and deeds. So we have lists. I don't know if we have them in every state. Some states don't do over-the-counter, but we have a lot. And we're always getting more. And in fact, I would think if you're investing enough to where you deal with over-the-counter lists consistently, then it's worth going through all the over-the-counter lists we've got because it would take a while.
Skylar, did you see the let's see.
Yeah, I'm seeing some good questions.
Kenny's put a couple things in. I think you guys should clarify on that money. And then it ties in with what Chris is asking too about can you actually buy these liens with a credit? So here's the questions. Shay, can you buy these liens with a credit card? And if and do you really need 10 grand to start, or can you get some liens for $1,000, couple $1,000?
Oh yeah, well yeah, like I said, my first lien was $67, and the truth is it's not that hard to pick out good liens, and they don't have to be expensive. So you don't have to have $10,000. It really any amount of money is something you can work with because liens and deeds are of all different amounts. There are so many opportunities. I mean, okay, just to give everybody an idea of like an example. Okay, so let's say that I don't have very much money. Let's say I've got $1,000 in the bank to start with. Well, there's one strategy that I could use that's all about buying a little piece of junk property. Why would I buy a little piece of junk property? Well, the only reason I would buy it is if it was adjacent to another property. So in other words, imagine somebody approaching you and saying, hey, how would you like to add another 30 or 40 feet to your backyard? And most people would be interested. And because you know how to find these properties, you can find something that they probably didn't even know was available. You can actually work out a transaction like that without ever actually buying the property beforehand. So in other words, you talk to this guy, work out a deal. He says, sure, I'd love to buy it for this amount. Then you can buy the property and make a good, healthy return on it. That's a strategy that you can utilize for almost no money at all, and it's very easy to utilize. You can do this with very little money. I don't want anyone to get the idea that if they don't have some kind of a set amount that they are in trouble, because there are so many opportunities out there, and it's for all different budget levels and all different strategies.
Skylar, this one's for you. Do you and when you were setting stuff up on that $4.99? Well, actually, we've got 4 separate questions asking the same thing. Do you have a 3-pay option on the $4.99?
We have a payment plan option, and for those of you that are interested in the payment plan option, Shay, did we set that up, or was that just happened to give us a call?
I accidentally erased it like a few minutes before the webinar.
Wow.
Put it back.
So I got to tell you what. So one of two things, folks. Either let Shade put it back, or call the number that's no longer on the screen.
Give us a call.
Call the number that's no longer on the screen because Shade just took that one down too. There we go. Back up, Shade. Come on, buddy.
I'll type it in the chat box. Again,
thank you, Skylar. Yeah, come on.
It's 866-243-8877.
Excellent. Oh, and they can also email us at support@propertytaxlist.com if there's more questions, which we're happy to answer questions if people have questions, because we know during a webinar it's hard to get questions answered, but you may still have a lot of questions.
And by the way, Jim, you asked a question earlier, Jim H., about getting the website onto getting a password for the property tax list website. That's their website. I mean, that's their proprietary website, guys, and so they're going to allow that for their members. And I hope that answers your question. And
those of you that enroll here tonight, not only do you get the Property Hunt Workshop as a bonus, but you will actually get access to the website tonight. We'll make sure that those of you that enroll here tonight, we'll get you a username and a password set up. So I'd give me about 3 hours, and you'll be rocking and rolling.
Sweet. Hey, can you type in, Skylar, the email address? We had a couple of questions on that because you gave it out. The other one, there's 2 questions here, one from Roy and one from Greg, that really tie in together. Okay, Roy's is, if there's a live auction, the lien is sold over the counter and I buy it, do I automatically get it, or can others bid on it? But it seems to me that it ties in a little bit with Greg's question, which is, if you get outbid on an online auction, do the counties allow you to know that so you can increase your bid, or do you have to come out with your best bid to start with? Or do you know?
Those are some really good questions.
Depends on the contract.
Actually, it goes both ways. As far as like whether or not you can see the bid, for some reason there were a lot of counties that had online auction systems where you couldn't see the bid for a long time, which is kind of dumb because that's the whole purpose behind an auction, is to kind of get people excited about seeing the bid. And so they're switching over more to kind of that eBay style auction where you can see the bid amount, but it's something that's going to vary from auction to auction. So we've seen it both ways, essentially. And let's see here. And the first question was, I guess I wrapped up. What was the first question you asked me, Bob?
Yeah, well, that was what Roy was talking about over-the-counter bids.
That's
And then we call it, of course, do you have to pay to bid online, or can anybody just jump in and bid online, or do you have to show, or is there a fee to like $25 to pay on the bids?
Well, there's no actual fee to bid. What counties do and what these online auction companies do, and it's really smart the way they have it set up, is they require a deposit in order to be a bidder. And the deposit might be a certain percentage of, of whatever properties you want to bid on, or they may just have it be a flat amount, but it might be something like $500, which, by the way, if you don't spend the money, then they give it back to you. But the idea is that it helps to kind of weed out the people that are serious and the people that aren't, so they don't get so they don't get the deadbeat bidders. They're the properties that they can't sell because people can't pay. The over-the-counter question earlier is a really good question too, because there are some really unique advantages to over-the-counter investing. And in a webinar like this, we wouldn't cover because we're covering so many basics. But with over-the-counter specifically, the main benefits are there's no competition, so you can't get outbid. If it's on the list and it's still available, then the price you see is the price you pay, and if it's a lien, you make the maximum interest rate return. There are so many things you can do, though, and for our students that get involved and get more advanced, there are so many strategies that we can also teach. There are even property acquisition strategies with tax liens. But again, we want to keep things as simple as we can in the beginning to utilize. Over-the-counter investing is an awesome strategy. There's so many opportunities. If students have interest in over-the-counter, then we definitely would encourage, that's a strategy that we encourage all the time because there's so much opportunity.
Chris has got a couple questions, and he's actually repeated them because we probably didn't answer them 5 minutes ago. So Chris, or maybe it's a she, because my daughter's name is spelled K-R-I-S. Anyway, do you guys well, here's a question. The big question is, and I've seen this a couple times, can you buy these tax liens or even tax deeds with a credit card?
Oh, yes, that was the question earlier.
I love that question because I bought a tax deed in Texas, in Copper's Cove, right outside Fort Hood, and I paid $3,500 for this property that was, after repair value, was probably $52,000 is what I sold it for, and I think we had to put $15,000 into it. So I put that on a credit card. I don't know if you can do that across the country though.
It's something that's evolving and changing. 10 years ago, it was almost emphatically no. But what's happened is in order for counties to do more of the online auctions, they kind of have to. And so, because there's only so many ways you can work out payment arrangements. And normally, if they hold an auction in person, then they can say, hey, you have to bring the money to us and kind of put it in our hands. But when they're doing an online auction, they have to accept some form of electronic payment. And so the answer to that question is yes, you can buy them that way. That's the direction things are going. And the more online-based you are, the more you'll find counties that are willing to work with you on that. But not every county will do it, but it's becoming more and more prevalent.
Sure, absolutely. And by the way, guys, this is for your own portfolio. I mean, this is not something where you're going to go out and find a tax deed and then we're going to sell your house for you and all that kind of stuff. That's not what this is about. I mean, this truly is about buying and acquiring properties through tax deed, either through a tax deed foreclosure sale or through a tax lien. Either you're picking up to invest your money for a long-term yield, or you're trying to pick up the property itself and flip it. And either way, we're assuming that you're a savvy enough real estate investor to do that on your own. But as far as teaching you how to do the liens, how to make the payments, where to get the money, and that kind of stuff, that's what this program is all about. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
And also, Bob, along the same lines as what you're talking about there, I know Chris looks like mentioned about, do we market the houses for you? We won't market the houses for you, but what's great is that we have such a huge and vast training center. And within that training center, we have sections geared toward just marketing the properties after you purchase them. I mean, so we've got resources available for the students when it comes down to something such as marketing that property after the purchase.
Awesome.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you guys, but just one thing that I was thinking about as you guys were talking, and that is if you want to talk about teaching a person how to fish, if a person learns how to do this, then for the rest of their lives, they're going to know how to do two very important things with investing, and that is they'll always know how to earn interest rate returns of 12 to 24%, and they'll always know how to find property for a fraction of what it's worth, maybe 10% of assessed value. And those are skills that you could always use at some point in your life. There's always ways, you can always make money with those skills.
We've got a lot of our investors on the line who are from usually what I call the three big states. Majority of my students are from Florida, Texas, and California. And they're also all over, as you can see earlier. Do we have a minute to just touch base on the pros and cons of Texas tax liens?
Yeah.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, I feel kind of bad because I skipped it earlier when I was going over the redemption deed states because I didn't want to get too bogged down. But the redemption deed states are that third class or that third category. So we have the tax liens, tax deeds, and then what we call redemption deeds. Texas is a redemption deed state. Now, redemption deeds are really pretty simple. They are just like tax deeds. So the county forecloses on a property just like they would with the tax deed. If somebody's late with their taxes enough, eventually the county will foreclose. What's different in Texas is that Texas law gives the property owner a redemption period after the foreclosure takes place. Now, what's also kind of weird about it is that the investor that bids on it actually takes possession of the property during the redemption period. So you show up at the auction, you bid on the property, and you take possession of it like it's yours, but you can't actually sell it until this redemption period expires. Now, the redemption period, it's going to go one of two ways, and it depends on what kind of property it is. If it's what's considered a single family, like a homestead property, it actually has to qualify for that homestead classification. Then it gets a 2-year redemption period. Otherwise, everything else gets 6 months. Now, normally that would all be downside because when you buy a deed, one of the advantages is you want to be able to turn around and sell it as fast as you can. But with this redemption period, you can't do that. Well, in Texas, what they do to kind of balance the scale there is they offer what's called a penalty rate. And that penalty rate is a good penalty rate. It's 25% flat annually. So what that means is that as soon as you buy that deed, if that property owner wants to redeem it, and if they want to pay the county what they owe to get it back, you're going to automatically make 25% on your money if they do that. And that's in that first year. If by chance you've got a homestead property and it has that 2-year redemption period, if they were to redeem that at any point during that second year, then you're going to make the 25% you made in the first year plus an additional 25% for that second year. It's also a flat rate, so it doesn't matter when it were to redeem. So if you were to buy that property and a week later the owner finally came up with the money and they paid the county, you would still get 25% on your money even though the investment duration had only been a week. So that's part of the reason why Texas is so popular is because people say, hey, I'm either going to get the property here for a good price or I can make it a bare minimum a 25% return, which if you can do that in a few months, that's impressive. Or I'm going to have the property and be able to turn around and sell it that I got for a good price.
Awesome.
So that's kind of redemption deeds and how they work. Texas is actually one of the better. It's known as one of the best states in the country to invest in because the counties there also have lots and lots of sales. So there are sales taking place in Texas all of the time.
Sandra asks if she were to buy a lien this year, a tax lien, the taxes are not redeemed. Does she continue to receive interest rate every month after the 12th month? In other words, is it until it's redeemed? Is it only for 12 months?
What it essentially is until it redeems. So from the time you buy that lien until the property owner pays the county what they owe to get it removed, it's going to continue to accrue interest. But it's also important. Sometimes students get the idea that they're getting money, and I don't think Sandra has that idea, but I want to make sure I clarify so everybody knows that in order to get that check from the county for your initial investment plus your interest rate return, in order for that to happen, the property owner has to pay off what they owe in taxes and fees. So when the property owner pays that to the county can cut that check to you for your initial investment plus the interest rate return. But that interest rate will continue to accrue until it redeems. So even if it was a 2-year redemption period and then it took 3 months during the foreclosure process, so it was a total of 25 months before you actually got paid, you would still make interest on every month of that 25 months.
That's really awesome. That's awesome. Shay, let me ask you something. Do you guys go through, in your materials, do you go through a lot more with due diligence? Because Marilyn had a comment earlier, you you do the same thing I do. When something comes up, we go to Google. Google's our friend, and we can do Google Earth, we can do Google Maps, we can, there's a lot of stuff you can find out on Google initially, and then we kind of branch off and do our own due diligence to back up what we initially found. Maryland's concern is that, if you Google a property, try to buy a tax lien on a property, and you Google it, the picture that comes up might be 3 or 4 years old, and it might not even be there anymore, type thing. So,
yeah, it's a really good question.
Do you teach people how to do your due diligence in your course?
Yeah, in fact, it's probably what we spend. I would say we probably spend 75% of our time in training just talking and teaching about due diligence. And so we've got it nailed down into very specific steps, and we go into a lot of depth and detail about due diligence. And we do kind of hop onto a site, and you'll see us go to this site and this site, but the actual due diligence process is really a much more involved process that we can take a person through from beginning to end. We can also show you how to utilize a lot of different tools rather than just one or two. We utilize a lot of different tools when we're teaching students or teaching investors how to basically find these types of properties. I also wanted to just mention that we spend a lot of time doing live training, live demonstrations with our students because a student really needs to see you go from this site to this site to this site. We actually will teach people how to do incredibly in-depth searches into property records so that they can find any potential problems. So yeah, this wasn't really a very in-depth example of due diligence because we don't want to confuse people, but the due diligence process, though, is probably what we spend the majority of our time teaching.
And guys, let's face it, we all know this. You're not going to learn everything there is to know about tax lien and tax deed investing in an hour. We got that. And most of you, if you don't pick up a recording or whatever, you're going to forget half of what you saw tonight. And I'm not being rude about that. That's just, learning. I mean, there's repetition, and to really start to sink in. So you probably have a really good feel for what this can do for you, but to be the expert, I mean, you got to take a leap and jump in and get some more in-depth education. And think about it. If you're 12 conference calls, well, I'm sure they're at least an hour and a half. I mean, 12 hours to 18 hours of personal instruction, or one-on group instruction with backup materials is a whole lot different than listening to a webinar for 90 minutes on a Wednesday night. So.
Something else I forgot to mention as well, Bob, and that is a couple things. First and foremost, we're a training company, and we've always taken pride in that, and we love what we do. We guarantee all of it. So the bottom line for us is if a person goes through this training, if they go through this 3-month training and they don't feel like this was a value, they don't feel like it was worth what they paid, then we'll give them a full refund. That's always been our policy, and the truth is we rarely ever end up giving any refunds. So
guys, listen to that. I don't know if you guys all heard that. I'll reiterate it. I'm not bashful. These guys guarantee their work. If you don't like it, at the end of 3 months, call them and ask for your money back. They really are very, very good at what they do. Wow, we could go on and on and on with questions. I guess the best thing I'm going to just tell you is this. You see the link. It's in the box on the right. It's secrets of taxliensinvesting.com/special-offer. Rather than typing all that thing out, just click on it. Or call them. Call them at 866-243-8877 and just ask questions. I mean, these guys are more than happy to help. They even gave you their email address that you could send something out to them, send them an email, ask them questions. That's what they're here for. They love to teach. They're very, very good at what they do. I actually, while I was online tonight, I already looked up the Indianapolis tax lien sale, and it's not going to be till next September. So I've already got that marked on my calendar to be involved in that. So, I mean, I'm learning as we're going here as well. So I appreciate you guys being on the call tonight. Anybody, you know what, I'm just going to talk. We could go on forever for questions, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off and say, hey, call these guys. There's a number on the screen, 866-243-8877. Click on the link. If you've got a financial thing where the $4.99 seems like a lot, and it's a good investment. At the same time, if you want to spread it out over 2 or 3 payments, they've got options for you to do that. If it's not on the website, just pick up the phone and call them, and they'll work with you.
Yeah, and you know, also let them know it'll be there. Give me like 5 minutes after the webinar is over, and I'll have it back up.
Hey, get off the webinar now and go do it. So no, I'm yanking your chain, buddy. We're going to leave the screen up. Skylar, anything you want to add before we?
You know, I think one thing that I want to hit home is just the idea that you guys, you have access to, once you get enrolled in the program, the website is there. It's designed to be self-sufficient. But we do know that sometimes you hit snags, you have questions, you have the resource line. Anytime that you have questions, give us a call. More likely than not, I'm going to be the one that will answer the phone. Be more than happy to spend the time that I need with you, help you determine your investor profile, maybe help you pick out a few counties. I mean, we're here to help you be successful. There's so much opportunity out there right now. It's unbelievable, and I'm just grateful to be here.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Shane, anything you want to say?
You know, I've done so many trainings, and you can always tell, you know, how good the group is based on the questions, you know, that you get. And we've had fantastic questions from this group. Obviously, a group that's really engaged with it, and we appreciate that. It makes everything, well, for the teacher, it always feels best when you feel like you're actually teaching. And so we really appreciate that, and also just want to invite everybody. You know, we do enjoy what we do, and if you have any interest in this, we'd like to believe that this is the best opportunity as far as we think it's the most bang for the buck out there. We've seen a lot. So, you know, if you want to get involved, this is the best way, I think, to do it.
You know, there's a third-party testimonial right on the screen in front of you. And you guys don't even know Jim, but Jim wrote, Bob, these guys are better than the other seminar I attended. So, yeah, I mean, there's your third-party testimonial right there. And Don just became a member of your program, so congratulations, Don. That's awesome as well. And, guys, I'm just really excited. Thanks so much for being on here. And as everybody here on the call can tell, these guys are true teachers. And that's probably why we get along so well, is they're here for your success. So pick up the phone and call them, or get involved in their program, invest, and get ready to rock. Don, congratulations, buddy. And where and when will Harlan, I haven't seen you in ages. How are you? I'm really glad that you're on. Sorry, I did a lot of my older students. And so where and when will the property workshop be held?
Well, you know, it's going to be an online workshop that we've got scheduled. So they don't have to be anywhere specifically, and I think we've got it scheduled for a week. I tell you, all the details that we have, we can provide when a student contacts us, or when you enroll. So don't worry about not being able to make something. We can also do, if there's enough people that can't make a certain date, we can always do a makeup for it. But I think it's sometime we've got scheduled in the next 3 weeks. I'd have to take a look. The easiest thing would be for us to be able to send you the information once you contact us.
Okay. Jim, thank you very much. Hendra has called the line and has hit a busy signal at the 866 number.
Oh, that's because we're on it. Sorry.
You guys, I swear. All right, so be sure and contact Hendra. Hendra, do me a favor. In the little chat box in there, just stick your phone number in, and that way these guys can call you directly, and you don't have to wait for them to free up the line. So do that. Chris, you're certainly welcome. We specialize in new perspectives. The bottom line is we specialize in doing the business, and I want you guys to just get out there and start investing. And even if you only have a couple grand, and that couple grand is making money, then I feel as a teacher that I'm helping you move forward in your investment career. So even if you haven't gone out and bought 18 houses, you know, or 180 houses or one house, that's okay. Do something where you're starting to get returns and you're building your future, because I'm not only about just quick cash, I'm also about long-term wealth building. So there you go. Can you give the email in the chat box? He may have come on a little bit later. In the chat box right now, you'll see the secrets to tax lien investing, and then you'll also see the 866 number, and you'll also see the support at propertytaxlist.com. Okay, and Don, you know what? I'm just going to cut it off here, guys, because we're at 45 minutes. So anyway, you guys have a fantastic evening, and thank you so much for being on. I appreciate it.